The state of modern social interaction is perhaps best summarized by a peculiar phenomenon often seen in digital spaces: the death of simple intent. In this landscape, you can state a harmless preference, such as a love for pancakes, only for a stranger to interpret it as a vitriolic attack on waffles. This isn't just a failure of reading comprehension, it's a fundamental breakdown of social trust. We have reached a point where well-articulated thoughts are intentionally stripped of their context and weaponized. Every "I like X" is translated into "I hate Y", transforming a personal taste into a declaration of war. It is fascinating and deeply troubling how accurately this captures the hair-trigger tension of our age. Life in the information era has become inherently aggressive. If you aren't prepared for constant mental combat, the digital environment makes you feel inadequate or invisible. We are living through a period where conflict has been fused with identity, and belonging to a side has become more important than the beliefs themselves. Within this endless friction, we must stop and ask, why have we become so pathologically defensive? And why does the world feel so much more toxic than it did only a decade ago? The most obvious driver of this hostility is the digital ecosystem we inhabit, which is governed by algorithms designed to maximize engagement through division. These systems operate on a simple mathematical truth: outrage travels further and faster than nuance. However, the tension isn't confined to our screens. It has leaked into our physical reality, creating a palpable, hair-raising atmosphere in mundane settings. You see it at the grocery store when a minor, accidental bump of a cart results in a stare of pure venom, as if a sovereign border were breached. You feel it on the highway when signaling to merge causes the driver in the next lane to speed up, sacrificing their own safety just to deny you space. It's as though the world is governed by a new, unspoken commandment: yield nothing and claim everything. Deep down, every random outburst or itching desire to lash out comes from a place of chronic overstimulation. We are walking around with our emotional armor half strapped on, pre-irritated before we even leave our homes. A single notification, a provocative headline, or a lingering grievance is enough to tip us over the edge. Bus rides are no longer quiet because people are resting. They are quiet because even eye contact feels like an invitation to a skirmish we don't have the energy to win. To understand why we are lashing out, we must acknowledge a slightly uncomfortable truth about our species. Humans are tribal by default. Our us versus them dynamic is an ancient survival mechanism that dates back to the very dawn of civilization. In the past, trusting your tribe and being wary of outsiders wasn't a choice. It was a biological necessity. Belonging was a fact of birth, an innate reality that defined your entire existence from the moment you were born. Your identity came first, and your beliefs were merely the baggage that followed. There was no concept of finding yourself because yourself was inherited. In many historical societies, this was even reflected in naming conventions. Surnames like MacDonald or Smithson were literal declarations of lineage and profession. Son of Donald, son of the Smith. Your identity was a preordained slot in a social structure. While this seems restrictive by modern standards, it provided a profound sense of security and interconnectedness. Imagine being born into a community where everyone shared your history, your goals, and your loyalties. This social blueprint mapped out your life, making individual ambition less important than collective survival. It built intense loyalty, but it came at the brutal cost of suppressing any voice that dared to deviate from the group's established path. The glaring problem we face today is not that our tribal instincts have changed, but that the scale at which we are operating has become unmanageable. Our ancient wiring, designed for small groups of hunters and gatherers, never anticipated a global, hyper-connected world. We are carrying tribal brains into a borderless digital arena where them is no longer a group across the river, but billions of people with competing frameworks for reality. This transition happened with a speed that outpaced our psychological evolution. Modern tribalism is fundamentally different because it is often parasocial and based on consumption rather than shared labor. We form intense allegiances to fandoms, brand identities, and cult-like public figures who mirror our surface-level ideas. In these spaces, there is no room for dialogue. We outsource our critical thinking to thought leaders who validate our biases, and in return we offer them fierce, unquestioning loyalty. This dynamic is alarming because it makes even the simplest request for clarification feel like an act of betrayal. When someone asks, "Can you explain why you believe that?" it is often perceived as a signal flare of discontent rather than a genuine inquiry. We have replaced independent thought with the comfort of a pre-written script, and we are quick to fire back at anyone who misses a line. A significant portion of our modern toxicity is seasoned by the way we consume information. Most of us are unaware of how much our worldview is shaped by the specific lenses through which we view the news. Two people can witness the exact same event, but walk away with entirely different emotional reactions and conclusions because the underlying facts were framed through opposing biases. Headlines are no longer designed to inform, they are designed to trigger a specific emotional takeaway. One outlet might frame a story as a national loneliness epidemic, while another frames it as a celebration of independent living. Both are looking at the same data, but they are telling two different stories to two different tribes. This creates a blind spot effect where critical information is heavily covered by one side of the spectrum and entirely ignored by the other. This fragmentation of reality is a psychological force that collapses context. When you're exposed to a relentless intimacy with the entire world's cultures and values simultaneously, your moral compass is constantly at odds with entirely different ones. This dizzying experience is deeply uncomfortable, leading many to retreat into the simplest, most rigid identities they can find. Extremism thrives in this environment because it offers the clarity that nuance lacks. When we look at global structures, we see a stark contrast between societies that value chaotic pluralism and those that prioritize engineered cohesion. Take a large-scale society like China, which often appears to outside observers as a model of public ideological unity. This isn't a result of accidental harmony, it is a case study in social control. With a population exceeding 1.4 billion, such a system manages the numbers game by incentivizing conformity and subordinating individual expression. To an outsider, the absence of loud culture wars might look like a utopia, but it is actually a structural contrast to the West. In suppressed societies, tribal fractures still exist, based on class, region, or generation, but they are kept beneath the surface through immense social pressure. By contrast, pluralistic societies in the West explicitly allow multiple competing tribes to coexist in the public square. This celebrates diversity and individual rights, which is a noble and beautiful choice, but it comes with a mandatory operational cost: constant friction. The chaos and the debates aren't bugs in the system, they are the price of freedom. However, when we lose the ability to manage that friction, the system begins to overheat, leading to the performative struggles for significance we see today. The tragedy of our current era is that we have swapped the existential struggle for survival for a performative struggle for significance. In a world where meaningful influence feels impossible, where you have no power over the global economy or government policy, people redirect their need for agency into spaces they can still touch. This is why personal relationships and online spaces have become so volatile. If you are too weak to change the big picture, your beliefs evolve from simple positions into tools of power used to carve out territory. This is clearly visible in communities where identity is tied to ideology in a parasitic way. Young people, in particular, are being initiated into red pill communities or intense fandoms that provide a false sense of selfhood. Whether it is a lifelong devotion to a sci-fi franchise or a strict brand loyalty, these affiliations begin to dictate a person's ethics and social circle. Brands and political movements know this, and they take advantage of it by intensifying divisions. As people become indistinguishable from their chosen tribes, defending a brand or an idea becomes an act of defending the self. We jump to protect the last piece of ourselves as the world tries to shred it away, often giving the benefit of the doubt to bad actors simply because they fly the same flag we do. This mechanism fuels a rise in public hypocrisy, where the performance of correct belief grants status regardless of actual behavior. We see individuals promoting purity or traditional values while being wrapped up in scandalous affairs, yet they remain protected by their tribe as long as they champion the right rhetoric. Agreement and dissent have become transactions in a reputation economy where nuance is a liability. We no longer engage with grand philosophies. Our ethics are tied to tweets, posts, and celebrity endorsements. We export our morality to avatars thousands of miles away, believing that a Hollywood actor's support for a cause somehow validates our own character. This is virtue signaling in its most desperate form, an assertion that my voice is a lever that moves something, even when that lever moves nothing but other people's pain. Younger generations are being raised in this curriculum, witnessing debate as a blood sport rather than a dialogue. They learn that rewards go to those who project certainty and establish dominance. If you grow up in a digital house where yelling is the primary mode of communication, you become fluent in the grammar of escalation. Personal insults become punctuation, and strategic interruptions become the vocabulary of a world that has forgotten the art of empathy. The most corrosive effect of this hostile discourse is the great exhaustion, the quiet retreat of reasonable minds. This isn't a passive event, it is an active, weary choice made by those who have the most to lose. In a battle of absolutes, the person with a nuanced view has the largest surface area for attack because they lack the armor of ideological purity. By acknowledging multiple valid points, they risk being dismantled by both sides as fence-sitters or heretics. In response, silence becomes a survival strategy. This mass opt-out creates a dangerous illusion that toxicity is the dominant way people interact, simply because the loudest edges are the only ones left in the room. This exhaustion is exacerbated by the fact that traditional milestones of success, education, career, home ownership, feel increasingly out of reach for many. When the material ladder is splintered by economic conditions, people fight for a position on a symbolic ladder instead. They live vicariously through parasocial relationships and highly curated social media highlight reels, which only deepens their sense of being behind. This complex anxiety simmers without an outlet, making the currency of conflict a potent and attractive way to feel powerful. As we build toward a crescendo of toxicity, we must recognize that the death of forgiveness is a central pillar of our current crisis. We have replaced the social script of redemption with a permanent digital ledger of sin. If you once posted something thoughtless, your current self is judged as irredeemable, immortalized by a screenshot and weaponized by a mob. We no longer believe in the idea that a person can do a bad thing without being a bad person. This lack of nuance leads to a tribe-based pardon system where we cover up the wrongs of our allies while executing the characters of our enemies. However, a less toxic society is not a peaceful one. It is a resilient one. Progress requires us to discard the fantasy of a future without conflict and accept that friction is the non-negotiable cost of a free society. The core problem is not an increase in disagreement, but our collapsing ability to coexist with it. We have forgotten how to share space with ideas we dislike. The person who endures this without becoming cruel is not the one who wins every argument, but the one who knows when to disengage. It is the person who practices emotional restraint in a world that rewards outbursts. This discipline is rare and uncelebrated, but it is the only way to preserve our humanity. A better world starts with the individual choice to bear the weight of friction without lashing out against its effects.